Hey y'all, this is episode number 12. Thanks for being here, and thank you once again to Flavor Aid for the intro music you're about to hear. Their EP release party is going to be May 31st, so that is 8 days away at Stubbs here in Austin, Texas, and their new single Ghost in Me is available on Spotify and all streaming platforms. What's up, y'all? This is the Sovereign Individual Podcast. My name is Eric Guerra, and I am your host. Welcome to another episode. Thanks for being here. I do really appreciate it to those of you who have continued to listen, and those friends of mine who have offered some feedback and constructive criticism. Really enjoy that as well. Trying to constantly improve, make this a little bit better. I feel like I'm getting a little better flow-wise, at least, about these episodes and kind of how things are going. I hope you noticed a difference in the quality of sound right now as well. I have gotten 2 new microphones so that I will be able to start doing those conversations I was talking about in the earlier episodes. I'm going to dub them conversations with interesting people. So I've got some interesting people in mind that I want to have some, long form conversations with and just talk about all kinds of cool stuff. So look for that soon. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing so far and you're looking forward to those conversations, please go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the show and share it, with friends, family members, coworkers, degenerates, anybody you think might enjoy hearing this take on the government and the ideas of liberty and all that good stuff. So once again, just appreciate y'all listening and being here. And I'm really excited. I like this new setup with the new mic. It's going to make things a little bit easier logistically, just the way I kind of do the podcast and have my show notes, my little outline that I started doing at the suggestion of my lovely girlfriend as well, to kind of keep me on track a little bit more. The first few episodes I would just kind of go a stream of consciousness type thing, and I think it works a little bit better this way. So constantly trying to improve. Appreciate the feedback from friends who are listening as well. And we're going to keep chugging along and seeing if we can't make this better and see if we can't grow this thing a bit. So today, I touched on it in the last episode when I was talking about the show Veep, that I wanted to touch on this episode about, the deification of politicians and how we tend to do that in American politics and why that's not a good thing to be doing. And I don't know. I mean, I don't pay attention as much to, specific. I have a general kind of idea of what's going on in the international community and kind of keep tabs on generally things that are going on. And, there's like a huge protest going on in France right now that the corporate media doesn't want to talk about because it stems mostly from the Paris Climate Accord, but we're not going to get sidetracked too much. So again, I know a little bit. I don't know enough about other political systems, other democracies, to know at what level there's the deification of their politicians, their elected officials or whatever. I know obviously in North Korea, it's kind of a different story. They don't have access to any other outside information, so that sort of deification is excusable, I guess would be the best way to put it. It's I don't think it's something that they're willingly choosing to do, most of them. Maybe the higher ups within the party there that are kind of aware of the outside world, they may be a little more culpable in that deification, but by and large the regular the regular population rather doesn't have any other information to go off of, so they have just spent their entire lives being told that their president is a god. So anyway, back to American politics. So that's where we're going to be basing this off of, and obviously where I see it most and see it constantly, day to day on Twitter, social media, anything like that, and in conversations that we have. And so, part of the problem with it is you get into this two-side mentality. And again, this kind of goes back to the the dangers of collectivism that I talked about in the first episode. You get that us versus them mentality, and you start putting your person, your guy, your gal, your politician that you are in support of on a pedestal, and it tends to make it so that you aren't critical of your guy, your person as much. The representative that you're in favor of, the elected official that you're in favor of, you tend to, Michael Malice put it really great, and I don't know if he got it from somebody else. So excuse me if I'm misappropriating this quote to Michael Malice if it was somebody else who said it. It was basically that your knee-jerk reaction is to vilify your enemy when they do something wrong, and when it's an ally, your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to justify it or to get into the nuance of it. And I think that's a great way of putting it, and by and large that's kind of what happens when it's somebody on that you are a fan of. You tend to give them the benefit of the doubt in a situation, and if it's the other person, you tend to view them as guilty before the evidence is even out, before they've even had a chance to answer the accusations or anything like that. And so it prevents being critical of the person that you're a fan of. And being critical of politicians is something we're in dire need of, like being far more critical of all politicians, not just the ones that you don't like, not just the ones with a different letter next to their name than the letter that you vote for, all politicians. And it's especially visible, like right now, like you ignore issues that you were critical of the other side for when it's your guy in office. Right now we've got Trump continuing the wars that were started under Bush, expanded under Obama, and there's a few people that are being critical of him about these wars, but by and large, like most Trump supporters are all gung-ho about Iran or Venezuela and why we need to go to war there, and jumping on board the neocon train. And what's been really unfortunate too is, I think I may have talked about this before, about how the anti-war left is gone, because I can remember the anti-war left during the Bush administration. Like, it was insane. Oh my goodness, they were loud during the war in Iraq, justifiably so. They could smell that war was based on lies. And so again, kind of ignoring what you were critical of the other side for. The anti-war left disappeared during the Obama administration. At least the vocal portion of it, the large portion of the left that was anti-war is gone. There's still a few individuals here or there on the left that are very critical of war, but by and large it's gone. And again, that's kind of born out of this idea of, well, now it's our guy in office, so we're not going to be critical of him. He's again, benefit of the doubt, he must be privy to national security information, to classified information, to secret clearance level information that he wasn't privy to before, and that's why he's continuing the wars. But when it was Bush doing it, there was no such leeway given. And it's been really weird about Trump coming into the presidency, is that the left hasn't returned to the anti-war side. And again, just if we're going to talk about Trump supporters, have no issue with the way that he's using executive orders, yet they were hypercritical of the way in which Obama used executive orders. again, you're willing to give your guy the benefit of the doubt, or think it's or you think it's okay because it's your guy doing it. You think that power is able to be wielded by him because he's your guy, and so you feel comfortable with it. One of the most annoying things too, if we're going to talk about it, I like to hand out my insults equally. So one of the more frustrating things that I see right now is I can't tell you how many different ways I've seen this phrased, or how many different people I've seen this come out of. But there's a sentiment of, man, remember the Obama administration where his only scandal was wearing a tan suit? And it's just like, oh, okay. If that's how you choose to remember the Obama administration, and you're going to be hypercritical of all the scandals that the Trump administration is going through, because the rest of us who live in reality remember, I don't know, let's see, Fast and Furious. You had the IRS targeting of conservative groups. You had the massive surveillance by the NSA under the Obama administration. You had Benghazi. You had Libya. You had drone strikes on U.S. citizens. You had a drone strike that killed an Italian citizen. Not to mention just the fact that he dropped more bombs than any other president in history up until Trump started up. And then, let's see. Were there any other I can think of off the top of my head? Oh, he was super... he was an enemy of whistleblowers, and the treatment of whistleblowers was awful under his administration. So just off the top of my head, that's like, I don't know, 10 I just listed. I don't know how many. And again, it's just kind of this idea of like, we deify and we hold up those that are on our side, and we're hypercritical of the ones on the other side. And the problem is that none of them are deserving of this deification that we give them. Like I said in the last one, most of them are horrible people. And you really saw this in the build-up to the 2016 election, and you still continue to see it, by and large right now, was this idea that I think there's probably a few people out there who legitimately believe that Hillary Clinton is a good person. I don't know how, but I think that there's probably a small percentage of people out there who truly believe that. And I think by and large, most people during the 2016 election were like, both of these candidates suck. I'm going to choose one based on, them, in my mind, being the lesser of two evils. And again, like I said during the last episode, a lot of people couldn't understand how anybody could feel that way about Trump, when there's a lot of us, those who pay attention and those who are, engrossed in politics and don't look at this through, rose-colored glasses, or, for me, I've never been a Democrat. I've never defined myself as that or viewed myself as that. So I was always hypercritical of Hillary Clinton, as you tend to be when you're on the other side and you look at their scandals and you hold them accountable for it, and you don't. So, like I was saying, there's so many people out there who felt the exact same way about Trump that they do about Hillary. And I still feel that way, and a lot of people still do. Like, regardless of what's going on in the Trump administration, and regardless of how bad certain decisions that have been made have gone, and regardless of the fact that he's, not keeping most of his campaign promises, that doesn't change the fact for me that Hillary Clinton is still a horrible person. And you don't become a good person because you're being compared to another awful person. But that's kind of the way things have gone and the way things went during 2016. And you got people that they start digging in and defending Hillary or defending Trump, even though they don't even truly support them or truly think that they're worthy people. And it's just something we need to be aware of, and we need to try to combat against, because it's not healthy. Whenever it leads to this mindset of, like, it leads to this mindset of all we've got to do is just get our guy, our person in there. Then it'll be okay. And it's just, I mean, it's especially the 2016 election was just such a perfect view of this situation, and just a little microcosm of this problem. And on both sides, there's the deification of Trump. There's still the deification of Trump by a ton of people. There's ridiculous memes that go around online and basically talking about how God has ordained him and how he's been chosen by Jesus and all these kinds of crazy things when he's probably the least evangelical president that we've had in quite a while. But that's what happens. And there's people out there that are deifying Hillary Clinton and talking about how much better things would be if Hillary was president. And I catch a lot of flack for saying I don't know that it'd be that much better. I don't know how much different it would be. But so I mean, again, they're mostly horrible people that are going. That's the nature of politics. That's the nature of government. That's the nature of power. It doesn't attract naturally the type of people that you want to be in those positions, because the good type of people who want to do right by the world and want to do right by others and try to do what they can to make this world a better place, their community a better place, etc., aren't going to be drawn to this world. They're not going to want to deal with it. I mean, I've gotten a taste of it, and it's insane. It's dirty. It's gross in a lot of ways. There's good people, and you gravitate towards them when you're also in it for a good reason. But you realize how small that number is the more that you get involved and the more stuff that you do, or even still, maybe not even that they're just bad people, but they're just incompetent or lazy or uninspired or fine with the status quo or just doing whatever. So but yeah, even the ones who are good don't deserve deification. It's not as if they're again, like I said last week, it's not as if they're ordained by some higher power or by nature to be fitted for this position that they're entrusted with. They're no different. They're just a person like you and I. So even if you're a big fan of them, and I mean, I'm guilty of this at times as well, as holding up somebody and being willing to be less critical of them than I am of other people. And it's something I'm really I actively try to work on. The first one was, I look back and it's just insane, but Bush, like I said, I was a hardcore conservative Republican when I was growing up, and during the Bush administration, man, Bush could do no wrong in my mind. I was also a huge statist, and if you would believe it, after listening to this podcast, I really thought that the government could do no wrong either, and that everything they did was right no matter what. And oh my gosh, yeah, it's weird to think about, but so I've been guilty of it too. And there's still times now, like Ron Paul, it is hard for me to be critical of him, and I do my best when there's things that I disagree with that he says, but I hold him in high esteem. I may be one of the few liberty people in my age group that didn't come to the liberty movement because of Ron Paul. In 2008, I was still a hardcore conservative Republican. I voted for John McCain, which is it makes my stomach turn that I voted for John McCain for president. It makes me feel gross. I feel like I need a shower whenever I think about that. But I thought Ron Paul was nutty. I thought he was out of his mind. And now I hold him in high esteem. I love reading his books, and I love listening to him speak. And he's a guy that I have a fondness for. And so, again, like I was saying, it's not as if I'm preaching from, some hill and saying that I, don't do this and I'm better than all of you and you should be like me. This is something I work on too. But it's just kind of thinking about it, being aware of it, and why, you need to be careful of it. And you really see this deification of politicians when one of them dies. Like, speaking of John McCain, how long did that funeral go on for? It felt like it was like 3 months long. And then George H.W. dies, and then felt like another 3 months. And then you think about it, and these guys, both of them are war criminals. John McCain served, and he was a POW, and, that's an insane thing that nobody should ever have to go through. Regardless of how I feel about the reasons why we were in that war or what we were doing there, as much as I complain about the state and as much as I am hypercritical of our foreign policy, I have a very much a soft spot for the military. Like I said, I was ROTC, planning on going into the Navy, so I know what that mindset is, and I know what it means to take that on, and the idea of serving your country and protecting the people that you love and the country that you love. And so I do not hold individuals like that with the same disdain or view them in the same way of the state. Now, if they're out there committing war crimes, that's a different story. You're still responsible individually for your actions. But at the end of the day, it's the people who are putting them into those situations that I'm going to hold far more responsible for that. And so John McCain, as a war hero, I tip my hat to him and show him respect for that. And, it's awful that he had to go through that, and no human should ever have to go through being a POW. However, to come back and then push us towards this foreign policy of nonstop war and bringing death and destruction, like, you shouldn't want that after having seen what you'd seen, and after having been a POW, and especially the Vietnam War. That was an awful one. The amount of devastation that we brought on innocent people, the amount of horrible atrocities that were committed by individuals. Again, individuals who I will hold accountable, for committing massacres or atrocities or dropping napalm on villages full of women and children. That's a whole different story. Or like H.W. Bush, the sanctions on Iraq and the Iraq War I, and I mean, it's, so you see these insane funerals and the way that they're treated as if they were, gods or saints or, whatever you want to call them. And it just seems, undeserving, and you really see it during funerals like that. And again, it's just, you got to be really careful. These are just people, and some of them are pretty awful. Most of them are pretty awful. But then the problem that you get into, and that I get into a lot when talking about something like this and when bringing up this type of thing, is excuse me, new microphone can't help stuttering speech, I guess. But I'll often get accused of whataboutism, and it happens a lot, whenever, like, for instance, what I said earlier with the no scandals and listing off all the scandals for Obama, because people will start criticize something that Trump's doing, and I go, well, that's awful, and this is also, something that the Obama administration was doing. People will be like, well, that's just whataboutism. No, for me, that's not what it is, because I'm not saying it as a Trump supporter, using it as justification for his behavior, or using it to try to excuse his behavior. I'm never using it for that. I'm using that to say this is a deeper problem than just the specific person who's in office. This is a problem with the government. It's a problem with the system that we have with the state. This isn't an individual problem that can be fixed by just getting a different person with a D next to their name into office, and that's going to make things better. So that's the reason that I use that, is to try to show, like, look, this is a systematic problem, and it's been administration after administration after administration. This isn't just, exclusive to the Trump administration. This is awful. You had the Bush administration, which gave us the Patriot Act and the freedoms that went away with that, and they gave us the Department of Homeland Security, and then that led into the Obama administration and the NSA spying, and their attacking of whistleblowers and their treatment of Snowden, and then that leads into now you got Trump and the Trump administration going after Julian Assange for publishing information that showed war crimes that the American military was committing. And I said in the Julian Assange episode, I said that they would not leave it as just what they were charging him for, that they would be adding charges. And lo and behold, today they added 17 charges onto Julian Assange. So it stacks on top of each other. It's a flow that goes through. So it's not whataboutism. It's saying, look, this problem isn't just, you can look to where it started, and you can look to see how the administrations, regardless of the letter next to their name, are continuing it. And that's the problem. The state is the problem. If you are uncomfortable with the amount of power that Trump has right now, and that he's using, and the things he's doing with that power, but if you have that problem with Trump now, but you didn't have it with Obama, you need to take a look in the mirror, because what you have a problem with isn't the individual. What you have a problem with is the amount of power that the executive branch has. And whenever you're talking about it, or whenever you're thinking about the power of the state, or the power of the executive branch, let's just say, you should never think of it in terms of, well, we just got to get our guy in there and then it'll be okay because they can do the right thing and they can make it better. No, you always have to think about, what's this going to look like when a person I loathe has that power? What's this going to look like when people who vehemently believe in things that I find abhorrent are wielding that power? What's that going to look like? And that is why I'm so adamant about bringing up what, quote unquote, whataboutism, and talking about prior administrations and how this is a cyclical, systematic problem, and that the problem is the government and the size and the scope of government and how much power we're allowing it to wield over us. It's one of those things. I can't remember who it was that we were having a conversation, and something came up about FDR, and I was like, oh, well, I refer to him as, I think, a piece of garbage, or I may have used more colorful language than that. And they kind of just gave me a kind of a roll your eyes, like, really, FDR? And I'm like, yeah, there's probably a couple 100,000 Japanese people that would agree with me. And I just mean the ones that we intern, Japanese Americans that we intern. I'm not even, talking about the manner in which we carried out World War II and just firebombing cities and killing innocent civilians. I know FDR himself wasn't the one who ordered the nuclear strikes, but, the type of warfare that we used was not, honorable in a lot of ways. And so... But I get that response a lot. And it just it makes me chuckle, because I'm like, look, my baseline for judging politicians, like the very first thing I judge them off, starting off point, jumping off point, like whether this is the first thing you got to check off my list if I'm going to consider you a good person, is, are you or are you not a war criminal? I don't think that's a very high standard to have. I think that's a pretty logical standard to have as to whether or not I'm going to talk favorably about you or view you in a favorable light, that the very first thing that I ask about somebody is, are they or are they not a war criminal? I think that's a pretty low standard to meet. And the fact that so many of our presidents and politicians can't meet that standard says a lot about where we are as a country, and a lot about where we are socially, how we view the idea of warfare and this constant warfare state, and what, or just so removed from it. You know, we haven't had a war come to our shores since, I mean, even 9/11 wasn't like a true war type thing. We're talking about, like Pearl Harbor damn near. I guess you could say the Cuban Missile Crisis came close. But even then, that was just, even then, that's one of those things where literally all the Soviet Union was doing was exactly what we were. Now, you can argue about whether or not they have the right to do it or not. And the fact is that's a direct response to us putting missiles in Poland. Like, we're putting it literally on their border, and then we get, the United States government gets all up in arms when they're going to put it on an island off the coast. I'm not excusing the behavior of our nation, and believe me, I am no fan of the USSR. They're communist, they're a socialist government. I despise them. But I think the problem that we run into with things like this, both on an international, scale and on a domestic, is the refusal to see things from the other point of view, or the refusal to even lend validity to the other point of view, and why they're acting in the way that they do. And it just takes a little bit of just kind of stepping out of your shoes and putting on theirs for just a second, and just thinking about how you would feel. And it's really surprising that more and more people aren't getting it when it comes to the government, because of how often the executive branch changes parties. Like, the people who are Democrats who are up in arms about the power that Trump is wielding, they were just in that power, experiencing it. And vice versa. The people who are Trump supporters, who are all happy with what he's doing now, were just opposing it not too long ago. And to think that all you need is just your person in there, and that's going to make things better. I mean, it's laughable at best, because there's not going to be a party that's going to be able to maintain power in the United States. It's just not going to happen. That's not the way the voting's going to work. So start looking at the true problem. And the true problem is the state. The true problem is the government, and how much power and influence and control it has over our lives. That's kind of where I wanted to get to with this. Is just, hold your people accountable. Be critical of the actions that they do. Don't jump to giving people that you like the benefit of the doubt, and then immediately viewing people that you don't agree with as guilty right away. Just try. And again, like I said, this is something I got to work on. This isn't coming from a area of, this is, something I've perfected and then I'm good at. This is something I work on too. But let's hold everybody to the same standard. Let's hold our people to the same standard that we hold the others to. And let's start doing what we can to fix the actual problem. Because it's not going to be solved by just getting our guy or your guy in there. And that's going to be okay, because then they'll be wielding that power in the right way. The problem is the power and where it's at. So let's start doing what we can to limit that. So that's going to be it for the day. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope the sound quality sounds good. This is, I feel like a much nicer mic than the one I was previously using, so I'm hoping that you can hear the difference in this episode. So again, like I said, we're going to get those conversations going here pretty soon. I'm not sure exactly when the first one's going to be or who it's going to be, but I can start looking into that now that I've got 2 microphones. So next episode will be out on Monday. Don't know what I'm talking about yet. And so it'll be a surprise for me as it is for you. Enjoy your Memorial Day week. Oh, maybe I'll talk about Memorial Day or something along those lines. I don't know. But enjoy your Memorial Day weekend and be safe out there. Don't drink and drive. Use Uber and Lyft. The free market has provided us a great way to avoid drinking and driving. So once again, free market provides. Thanks for listening, y'all. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you enjoyed this episode. And remember, you are a sovereign individual, and nobody, no matter how much you like them, is worthy of deification. Thanks, y'all.